देंगे। फेसबुक लाइव हो गया हमारा?
ठीक है मैम।
ओके, स्टार्ट करो। आयुष
मैम आयुष ज्वाइन हो चुका है मैम, बस उसे
हाँ।
एक
यस सर, आ गई आवाज में। सॉरी, म्यूट पे था मैं।
ठीक है आयुष,
Yes.
स्टार्ट कीजिए प्रोग्राम, है ना?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ayush Jha, student of MBA Public Administration Policy, third semester. We have entered in the last day of Diksharam, which is the fourth day. It is an auspicious occasion as the fourth day of Diksharam coincides with 145th birth anniversary of Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, a legend who needs no introduction. With this, I would like to extend a warm welcome to respected Professor Dr. Rekha Acharya, our, our distinguished guest, Dr. Shirish K. Pathak, faculty members, and all my fellow students. Now, I would request HOD Ma'am, Dr. Rekha Acharya, to officially welcome our distinguished guest.
Thank you, Ayush. This is the fourth day, as Ayush has pointed out. And good morning, everyone. All जो भी वहाँ पे प्रेजेंट हैं, हमारे स्टूडेंट्स, सभी को बहुत बहुत नमस्कार एक बार फिर से। आप लोगों का उत्साह देख के बहुत खुशी हो रही है कि आप लोग ये पूरे 4 दिन फेसबुक और गूगल मीट दोनों के माध्यम से हमारे बीच हैं। हमने पिछले 2 दिनों में भी आपको विभिन्न विशेषज्ञों से के बहुत सुंदर लेक्चर सुनवाए, और आज जब ये आखिरी दिन है हमारा, तो हमारे साथ में है डॉक्टर श्रीश के पाठक। आप प्रोफेसर हैं वर्ल्ड अफेयर्स, अमेठी इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ इंटरनेशनल स्टडीज पे, अमेठी यूनिवर्सिटी उत्तर प्रदेश में। और सर का इंटरनेशनल अफेयर्स पे बहुत अच्छी पकड़ है। हमने 2 अक्टूबर को भी इनको सुना था। और जैसा आप सब जानते हैं कि बेसिकली जो वर्ल्ड ऑफ कम्युनिकेशन है, उसकी अपनी एक महत्ता होती है। इफ यू हैव गुड लर्निंग कम्युनिकेशन स्किल्स, देन यू कैन विन ओवर मेनी चैलेंजेस इन योर लाइफ। तो कम्युनिकेशन इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट इन लाइफ, not only life but in every sphere, right? और जैसा कि आयुष ने हमें बताया कि सर वल्लभ भाई पटेल की भी आज 145th बर्थ एनिवर्सरी हम मनाने जा रहे हैं। और आप जानते हैं कि सर वल्लभ भाई पटेल न केवल एक लीजेंडरी थे, न केवल एक राजनीतिज्ञ थे, पर एक ऐसे ऐतिहासिक पुरुष थे जिन्होंने 245 रियासतों को मिलाकर भारत की राष्ट्रीय एकता और अखंडता की स्थापना की थी। और ये एक उनका ये एक मील का पत्थर साबित हुआ भारत की विविधता को एक करने में, क्योंकि हम चाहते हैं कि भारत कई जाति, धर्म, संस्कृतियों, वैल्यूज और भाषाओं की विविधता रखता है। और विविधता में इतनी अनेकताएं हैं कि हर 10 कोस पे पानी और बोली बदल जाती है। तो जब ऐसा इतनी विविधताओं वाला हमारा देश है, और इसकी एकता और अखंडता को सुनिश्चित करना और साथ में उसे बनाए रखना, एक ऐसे संविधान का निर्माण करना जिससे इसकी एकता और अखंडता सुनिश्चित ही ना रहे पर सुदृढ़ भी रहे, तो ये एक अपने आप में बहुत बड़ा चैलेंज सरदार वल्लभ भाई पटेल के समक्ष रहा होगा, जिसको उन्होंने बखूबी निभाया। और आज जो हम एक भारत दिखाए, हमको दिखता है कि हम बात तो करते हैं कि विविधता में हमारी एकता है, लेकिन वो एकता को कायम रखना हम नौजवानों का कर्तव्य है, हम यंगस्टर्स का कर्तव्य है। और बहुत ज्यादा जरूरी है कि जब आप अपने विचारों को परिलक्षित करते हैं या विचारों को एक्सप्रेस करते हैं, तो उस समय आपको ये ध्यान रखना पड़ेगा कि आप अपने विचार किस प्रकार से बता रहे हैं, या कहीं उनमें कोई विरोधाभास तो नहीं है, कहीं वह हमारी अखंडता को खंडित करने वाला तो नहीं है। तो एक नौजवान या एक स्टूडेंट होने के नाते हमें बहुत ज्यादा जरूरी है कि कॉन्शियस माइंड से हम काम करें, हमारे देश की एकता के लिए काम करें, और जैसा कि हम जानते हैं कि हम सब सोशल साइंस के विद्यार्थी हैं, और सोशल साइंस के विद्यार्थी होने के नाते हम पॉलिटिकल साइंस भी पढ़ते हैं, सोशियोलॉजी भी पढ़ते हैं, क्लिनिकल साइकोलॉजी भी पढ़ते हैं, कई तरह की चीजें पढ़ते हैं, लेकिन सभी का जो सार है वो है सोसाइटी की एकता और अखंडता को सुनिश्चित करना। हम जितनी भी हमारी सोसाइटी में इवल्स हैं उनको उनको दूर हटाएं, ये हमारी एक सामाजिक जिम्मेदारी होती है। और सोशल साइंटिस्ट का एक कर्तव्य होता है, जैसे हमने अपने मिशन में आपको बताया था कि वी वांट टू क्रिएट अ यंग सोशल साइंटिस्ट, ठीक है। तो यंग सोशल साइंटिस्ट का कर्तव्य होता है कि वो इस प्रकार के विचारों का सृजन करे जो देश की एकता और अखंडता को मजबूत करने में सहायक हो। तो आपके ऊपर एक सोशल साइंस होने के नाते एक बहुत बड़ी जिम्मेदारी है कि आप इस देश की एक यंग होने के नाते, नौजवान होने के नाते, एनर्जेटिक होने के नाते इस देश की अखंडता और एकता को सुनिश्चित करें। बहुत ज्यादा टाइम नहीं लूंगी। सोशल साइंसेस की तरफ से एक बार पुनः आदरणीय श्री शिरीष पाठक जी का बहुत बहुत स्वागत, अभिनंदन। और हम बहुत अभिभूत हैं और आपके तहे दिल से धन्यवाद भी करते हैं कि जब भी हम आपसे रिक्वेस्ट करते हैं तब आप सहर्ष हमारे जो हमारा अभिनंदन है उसे स्वीकार कर लेते हैं, हमारी अनुनय को स्वीकार कर लेते हैं और हमारे बच्चों से रूबरू होने के लिए तैयार हो जाते हैं। तो हम इस बात के लिए आपका तहे दिल से धन्यवाद ज्ञापित करते हैं। और सर आप मैं आयुष को बोलूंगी कि वो आपका छोटा सा ब्रीफ प्रोफाइल पढ़ेंगे। ओवर टू यू आयुष। एक बार पुनः स्वागत स्कूल ऑफ सोशल साइंसेस की तरफ से, धन्यवाद।
As Rekha ma'am told us about that, Dr. Shirish K. Pathak teaches World Affairs in Amity University, and Amity Institute of International Studies in Amity University, UP. I would like to extend his introduction by saying that he also headed the Department of Political Sciences in Galgitius University before joining the Amity University, and he regularly writes and speaks on several social issues and political issues of the country and the world. And today we are very thankful that he is with us. He took some precious time out of his busy schedule, and we have that. And today he is going to speak on the history and evolution of public speaking. Now I would like to request Dr. Shirish K. Pathak to put light on this issue, and he can go ahead. Thank you. Dr. Shirish K. Pathak.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ayush. It was really a very kind profile briefing. I'm very grateful to you, Ayush. Honorable Vice Chancellor Ma'am, respected Head of Department, Professor Rekha Acharya Ma'am, I fully endorse, ma'am, what you have shared on the occasion of National Unity Day. Honorable professors, research scholars, senior batch students, and new joinees. I am very grateful to Satyam Samrat Acharji for his cordial invitation and giving me opportunity to share my views on the history of public speaking on the occasion of Diksharam. This is certainly an honor to me, addressing the new batches of Devi Ahilya Vishwavidyalaya, Indore, a university of excellence, given tagged as the middle of the campus and upgraded A+ grade to it. Each time I find the moment to be with you, believe me, it delights me truly. The topic I'm given is really very interesting and important, especially for the students who are about to begin their public life from their days of university. So on this topic, I have prepared a PPT. Let me share that PPT from my laptop. Just give me 1 second. Okay, please confirm, Ayush. I think it's visible to everybody now.
No, it is not visible. No, sir, we are not able to see your screen. Sorry.
From my side, I have shared it. I think
it is visible. It is visible.
Yes.
Okay, sir, it's going.
Please
Yes.
extend it.
Yes. Okay, thank you, ma'am. So today's topic is history and evolution of public speaking. First, I convey my regards to
सर इसको
Sardar
फुल स्क्रीन कर दीजिए प्लीज.
Fine, ma'am. Just give me 1 second, ma'am.
एक्चुअली इट इज गोइंग लाइव ऑन फेसबुक, तो आप थोड़ा सा बड़ा कर देंगे तो वहां जो स्टूडेंट्स हैं. हाँ सर, बस राइट.
Yes, ma'am. That's
Thank you,
fine.
sir.
Okay, okay. So first, I convey my regards to Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. This is 31st of October. So with this quotation that manpower without unity, it is harmonized and united properly, then it becomes a spiritual power. So to remember Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, I am going to speak on this topic. First, I need to share my viewpoint why this topic, why we have chosen this topic. So yes, of course, we are living in democracy, and other than any political system, in democracy, public speaking matters the most. In other development, in other political systems, uh, I'm saying that even public speaking is very much important for each and every type of political system. But if it is democracy, so this matters the most. And secondly, public speaking is not just for the politicians. Contrary to the popular belief, it's not just I'm a politician, you are a politician. We are living in a democracy, and you are finding a public silence on public issues. So definitely it's going to be very detrimental for the health of democracy. So this is public silence is the greatest threat to any democracy. And the last reason why this topic is really important, because when we scroll the pages of history, we find very strong, very strengthened traditions of public speaking. It's not that our generation only has realized the significance of public speaking. When you go through the pages of history, you will find very strong pillars of traditions of public speaking. Now, let me come to the topic. First, then you will find that in history there is a rigorous study of public speaking. It's not that people believed in the significance of public speaking, but even people started about studying about public speaking. Means how you can elaborate yourself more attuned way, how to impress and influence the public opinion. So definitely it's a science, and you will find that in history there are several countries who have made this study very significant in their public life. And the study of public speaking is referred as rhetoric. So we will be coming on that topic also. Then we will be discussing on the relationship between public speaking and democracy. We will be describing about the interconnectedness between public speaking and democracy, how it's going to play a very important role in the realm of democracy if you know how to speak properly. And last, which is the most important part of my PPT, though it would be very brief, but it's the most important part. That is the concerns of public speaking. It's not that you have just started speaking on any stage, on any in front of any type of audience, but whatever you are going to communicate, that must be having some concerns, and we need to talk on those concerns as well. So let me begin this presentation. First, this is really interesting that you will be having traces of public speaking, the tradition of public speaking, way back 2400 BCE, and there was the maxim of Toheta, and this is this most ancient scripture right now we are having, and in that scripture, Toheta is known as Maxim of Toheta, and in that scripture you will be finding facts like these. In the public speaking, the significance of silence. So someone is speaking in front of audience, but that speaker, that orator, must be knowing where to put silence, where to put the speciality of silence. So sometimes silence actually speaks better. Second thing, timing. If someone is speaking, if someone is addressing to the audience, so that person must be knowing when to stop and how to put some certain facts at which moment. That right moment is very much important. That's called timing. Thirdly, Tohetep is saying that truthfulness, whatever you are communicating, that must be full of truth. So if you're not speaking truth, so definitely it's not going to be everlasting. Fourthly, you need to know that to whom you are communicating, which type of relationship you are enjoying. So if I'm addressing to you guys and I'm not knowing what is the relationship between you and me, so certain words, and I won't be able to communicate you properly. And the last one, as Tohetuk has described, this is a manners. So I'm speaking to you, I will be trying to choose certain words so that I can manifest manners of the society also. Not that I'm not respecting anybody or I'm not respecting the audience. So these facts are very much important while you're doing public speaking. What fascinates me that way back 2400 years, 100 years, these type of facts were there and they are still true. Even now, if you are going to speak in front of any population, in front of any audience, so you must know what is the significance of silence, timing, truthfulness, relationship, and manners. And there's a one quotation I have just extracted from the maxim of Tohetiv, that is, only speak when you have something worth saying. So, and this is true for public speaking. I'm not talking about any private speaking. So if you are addressing publicly, so please understand that if you are going to address anybody, so only speak when you have something worth saying. And this is so true even in this time, in this time. And the third thing, this is very important actually, and that's why I have said that public speaking is not the only characteristic of politician. Public speaking is very much available for each and every individual, especially in democracy. Almost each and every individual must be knowing how to participate in different political processes. And while participating in different political processes, you need to know that why you need to speak, why you need to address audiences or public, because for your public life, this is going to be your defending tool. If you are not knowing how to speak, definitely at the time of crisis, you won't be able to defend yourself in public life. So defending is very much important. Because you are having certain type of identity and you need to protect that identity, because your existence, your survival history is very much attached with that identity. So these facts are not new. These facts are well-known facts, but the fascinating fact is that these facts are coming from 2400 years before. That's why it's really, really important. So the worth of public speaking, significance of public speaking is well established back then, 2400 years before. Now, come to our country, India. It's not that our country is lacking the tradition of public speaking. Definitely, you will be finding the traces of and traditions of public speaking in India also. So, in India, I'm talking about ancient times. So, starting from 2600 BCE to 6th BCE, you will finding a strong tradition of public speaking. Starting from Harappan civilization, then come to Vedic era, later Vedic era, then post-Vedic era, and then at the time of Gupta period, the Gurukul, Aranyak, Upanishad, Shah, and you know the tradition of Sastrartha. Then you will be having the tradition of Charvaka and the Buddha tradition, and then definitely I will come to Nyaya Sutra. So you will find, yes, of course, you can have discussions that whether the Harappan civilization and Vedic period is having any connection or not, but at least from the time of Harappan civilization to the time of Nyaya Sutra. Nyaya Sutra is a really, really very important treatise, because Nyaya Sutra is a continuous treatise, and there is just one author for that text. No, it's compiling the whole tradition of public speaking, starting from 6th century BC to 2nd century CE. So in India, we are having more than 800 years long tradition of the study of public speaking. This is important. I'm not saying that India has recognized only the significance of public speaking. With the availability of Nyaya Sutra, we can say very confidently and proudly that we are having the tradition of study of public speaking, and that too for more than 800 years. So I will be quoting one hymn from this Nyaya Sutra, Satyam Bhamadam Shanatana. So according to this hymn, means that you need to know truth, and if you can afford to speak truth as well as palatable, as well acceptable, that is really great. You are trying to speak truth, but you are not being able to present it in a way that is going to be acceptable. So, and if you're not going to speak truth, and also you are not knowing that how to speak properly, then definitely this is not acceptable. So you need to speak truth, as well as you need to know the ways how to speak that thing properly, and this is the proper way of speaking. Esa dharma sanatana. As I have said, that Nyaya Sutra is consisting at least 800 years long a tradition of study of public speaking. So you will find in this treatise Kathavada. The word is Kathavada. In English, we can say debate and discussion. And I'm sure you will be knowing the difference between debate and discussion. Sometimes we are doing debate in the name of discussion. There's a difference between debate and discussion, so you need to very careful whether, and you need to be very conform also, that whether you are doing debate or you are indulged in discussion. So according to Nyaya Sutra, there are three types of debates. First one refers to the while doing debate, they are seeking the truth, something they are having from other side. And there's a, you can say, if I choose the phrase of dialectics, so in via you are taking thesis, then you are taking antithesis, and at the end of the debate you are reaching up to the synthesis. Now, Jalpa goal is just winning by any means. So there's a debate, and seeking truth is secondary. Jalpa means at any mean you need to demolish your, you need to win that argument. So, and third type of debate is Vitanda. In Vitanda, nobody can say that, don't know that whether your purpose is just to win the debate or you are seeking the truth. But the thing is, you are going to demolish your opponent by any means. You're not even respecting the identity of the person to whom you are communicating. That is referred as Vitanda. I need to say here that in our popular communication nowadays, of course, via Jalpa terms are not very much in currency, but Vitanda term is in currency right now, even now. So सब लोग कहते हैं कि आप बस वितंडा फैलाना चाहते हो, तो आप समझें कि हमारे भारत में एक ट्रेडिशन रहा है, और कम से कम ये शब्द अभी तक जीवित है, तो न्याय सूत्र में ने पहले ही रिकॉग्नाइज कर रखा है. बट वितंडा इज नॉट अ गुड थिंग एक्चुअली. इट मीन्स यू आर नॉट रिस्पेक्टिंग द सैंक्टिटी ऑफ दैट पर्सन. So that shows that there's a continuity from that time to even this time. Continue with that, in the time of Kautilya, 300 BCE, in Kautilyan Arthashastra, that treatise was really famous. And one thing is very much important about Arthashastra, that it is not just compiling the views of Kautilya, but also it has preserved the tradition of political traditions before the time of Chanakya. That's why it's really great to study about that. So in Arthashastra, you will be finding with several quotations by Kautilya, and it will be established that public discourses are very much important in order to have good governance. And if you compare political traditions, Indian political tradition to Western political tradition, so Kautilya is confident enough to elaborate the duties of king. Of course, it will be coming from the time of Manu. But this is really amazing that there was no democracy in modern sense of the term, but still in monarchy, you are expecting that your king must be dutiful, and that you will be finding some restrictions even on the conduct of king. So this is really great to know. Now come to the medieval period of India, and you will be finding traditions of public speaking through Bhakti movement. The time of Bhakti movement will be starting from 5th century AD to 9th century AD. So and the time of Sufism is 850 AD. And if you know about Bhakti movement is really very important movement because it has provided the chance for amalgamation of different culture. It started from South India, and it reached towards North India and almost all the corners of the country. And you will find the seeds of several social political reforms in this Bhakti movement. And how it was conducted, you will be finding different saints in different dialect and languages, and they were trying to communicate with the people through the art of public speaking, uh, bhajans, and kirtans and slokas. So they are directly communicating with the audience, with the people, and it's in a way they have initiated social and political reform. And that was so crucial that at the time of independence, when we were trying to make our constitution, to give our constitution a secular texture, definitely we will be we had our tradition from Bhakti movement as well. So significance of public speaking is already established, not only in ancient time of the world, ancient time of the country, our country India, but also in the middle period through the tools of Bhakti movement. If you talk about modern time, which history of the modern world, it supposedly start from Renaissance, 1300 to 1600, and there are two dominant traditions, that was humanism and rationalism. Humanism means in that discourse that man would be a measurement of each and everything. Means whatever you are going to accept in the governance or any walks of life, if that particular thing is worth for humanity, then only you are going to accept. And rationalism essentially means that whatever you are going to choose, first you need to question. First you need to check with your rational faculty whether it's going to be useful for your current life or not. So in this humanism and rationalism, and as you know the whole history of Renaissance and modernism and all those things, how it started and how it made a great impact with the tool of public speaking. So several philosophers, several public speakers, they began to question about the current existing regime, and they have applied the tool of public speaking. So the way we are living right now, it's quite global. It's not that we are having just a local impact or national impact. In our public life, in our private life, we are influenced by global culture. So the way we are leading our life right now, definitely it will start from Renaissance. You will find seeds those virtues coming from Renaissance, and in that Renaissance and modernism, you will be finding the significance of public speaking as well. Now, just to quote few great orators, and I have just taken American speaker for that matter, and you will finding that because America in the world politics is a dominating country, and if you start history from First World War and Second World War, I'm just leaving other history, so you will finding very dominant role of America in world politics. And American speakers are really great orators, and they had impacted hugely in modern time. So I will start from 1775. There's a one quotation by Patrick Henry: "Give me liberty or give me death." So how powerful is this thought? Then Abraham Lincoln, 1809, 1865. Do I not destroy my enemies? Or do I not when I make them my friends. So why I have just taken those quotations, so you know how to use the words and how impactful our orators were there. So I have a dream, Martin Luther King, 1963. It's really a different chapter when you talk about Martin Luther King, about against the apartheid and racism and all those things. John F. Kennedy, we must use time as tool, not as a couch. So just he has used one word, tool and couch, a tool and then couch, and see the significance of this quotation. We must use time as a tool, not as a couch. And then the last quotation I have taken from Barack Obama, because Barack Obama is really a great orator. And he said that, my fellow Americans, we are and always will be a nation of immigrants. We were strangers once too. So why I have picked this quotation, because right now President Trump is there. And if you know the policies of Trump, spoken by Barack Obama, so definitely it will offer you some insight. So my fellow Americans, we are and always will be a nation of immigrants. So just to show the influence of some quotation, how orators are using different phrases to influence the public opinion, I have selected some quotations. Now it's 11:35. So very briefly, I'm going to talk on the tradition of study of public speaking. As of now, we have just discussed about tradition of public speaking. Now we need to a little bit give focus to study of public speaking, because the worth of public speaking was well established. Now everybody must be having aspiration that they must be doing some role in public life. So I will start from this Greek and Roman tradition of rhetoric, because for India already I have spoken about Nyaya Sutra. So now come to Greek and Roman tradition. Study of public speaking is referred as rhetoric, and there was a tussle between rhetoric and philosophy. So first we need to understand what is this tussle, rhetoric versus philosophy. Philosophy means the underlying purpose is to seek truth. And rhetoric was logged in some sense that if you are having a good oratory skill, even if you are not offering truth, you can win the heart of the public audience. So rhetoric is an art actually. So with that art, you can falsify the truth, and you can take influences you can give influences to public opinion. That's why there's a continuous tussle going on between rhetoric and philosophy. If you are a philosopher, so you cannot compromise with the truth. But if you are a Greek and Roman traditions of rhetoric, you will be consciously finding this conflict. I will start from sophist. Time of sophist, 5th century BC. And sophist is not the name of just one speaker or one thinker. Sophist is a tradition actually. And if I want to give you parallel to this time, so you can understand that in the time of 5th century BC in Greece, sophists were free tutors actually, and they are just the teachers of common sense. And education was not at that time. Education was not dealt by the state, that city state, and parents of sons and daughters. They were very much having ambition that if their sons and daughters will be knowing how to speak well in public, so definitely they will earn any public office in near future. So to give insights of common sense and to know the learnings of rhetoric, there were free tutors referred as sophists. So in sophists, you won't be finding any particular thinking or thought, but they were quite famous at that time, because parents were very much keen to hire them, so that starting from sophist, there's a famous sophist Gorgias, and Gorgias has established that in speaker and audience, you will be finding linear relationship. It means audience is passive. So Gorgias was of the view that you must not take into the consideration of audience. The way you want to mold them, you can mold them. So this is the view of Gorgias. If you are having that skill that you can use creative linguistic phrases, so definitely you can make impact. After Gorgias, you are having Protagoras, and he said that anything and everything can be argued if you are knowing the both sides. So you can do anything. So Protagoras was of the belief that a good orator can do anything. In Greek tradition, you will be finding formal Greek schools. So the biggest name here, Isocrates. Um, for Isocrates' school to know the art of public speaking, there was a very tough entrance. It's not that you are having money and you can purchase any seat. No, you need to go through a tough entrance, and there's a hefty fee as well. Isocrates believed that there's a lot to know, and no one person can know each and everything. There's a limitation, human limitation in knowing. So what can be done if there is a limitation in knowing? So Isocrates believed that you need to use the public opinion. You need to use the opinion. The more you are having access to diverse opinions, so you will be knowing that thing that you can differentiate between useful things and useless things. So he believed basically in multiplicity of information. Nowadays we are saying comprehensiveness of the content. The more you are knowing, if you are very much aware about the different perspective of the given content, so definitely you are having multiplicity of information. One thing that's really important about Isocrates, that is, he believed in generalized understanding over specialization. Means if let me explain it. According to Isocrates, if you are a good speaker, so you are knowing the truth and you are knowing the specialties, but you need to have mastery over that particular topic in such a fashion, in such a way that you can generalize those things in a very simpler terms to which must be available to the common mass. It means if you are speaking, if you are trying to address the audience, so you need to be very specific while choosing the words. You need to choose very simpler words so that it must be very so that you must be very communicable without compromising the content. You need to convey the message, and Isocrates believe on that. He used particular term kairos, and he said that this particular kairos, the virtue of kairos, cannot be taught actually. So a good orator must be knowing the timing, at which time he must intervene, at which time he must give some surprises, so that his audience must be very keen to listen, very eager to listen. That dialogues cannot be taught actually. Why Isocrates school is really important in the tradition of public speaking? Because after Isocrates, the learning and studying of public speaking had become formalized. After Isocrates school, you will finding several other schools, of course, for the learning of public speaking. Now you must have heard about Plato, and there's an academy. He established a school named Academy. He was contemporary of Isocrates. As Isocrates has said about kairos, Plato said about knack. What is knack? So knack is a similar thing, but it can be taught with training. It can be taught. The more you will be learning about various aspects of life, so you will know what is knack and how to use it. So, but in Plato's, you will be finding that he's still towards philosophy. He was not very much into rhetoric, but he was the seeker of truth. So he believed on that idea that good life is very much important, and we need to continue that politics for the sake of good life. Good life means good life not only for one or two individuals, but for each and everybody. And in order to have that good life, you need to know how to speak publicly. So his focus was on philosophy. And he said that rhetoric was just a form of flattery, and philosophy was, as I have said, that you will seek that tussle almost going on between rhetoric and philosophy. So in Plato's case, he preferred philosophy, but he has not undermined the significance and role of public speaking. He has just criticized about the formalization of that school, which is saying that public speaking can be taught like ABCD, just like that. Now come to Aristotle. So you must have heard about his name. And Aristotle, like Plato, he also established a school named Lyceum, and he was a very pragmatist thinker. And then he said there are three types of knowledge actually. If you are a good orator, so you must be knowing all three type of knowledge. Knowledge. So what is technique? Technique means as an individual, you are having certain experiences in your life, and you are knowing the particular. Means suppose I am addressing to you, so I am experiencing something at the same time. So whatever I am experiencing, this is my technique. And on the basis of that experience, I will be communicating you again. And when I will be communicating you guys again, so I will be using that my experience. That is called technique. But because it is my individualized experience, so Aristotle said it's not that reliable, though it's very important, but it's not that reliable. So it is called technique. Second is episteme. Episteme means universal knowledge. It's not that something you are knowing, something I am knowing, only that version is correct. No, there is some knowledge, there's some sources of knowledge which is very much common to you also, common to me also. It means even I can verify the source for that knowledge, and you can also equally verify that source. So this is called episteme, mean a sense. And the third is intermediate knowledge. And Aristotle gave the term golden mean, means you are not, it means middle path. Like in India, Buddha has offered us middle path. Middle path means you are having some set of your personal experience, and also you are having access to universal informations. When you are having a right balance of both, then you will be doing great in the realm of public speaking. So this was technique, episteme, and intermediate knowledge. He was really democratic. Aristotle was very much democratic, and he accepted, as I have said, he was a very practical person. He was a pragmatic person. So he accepted the significance of rhetoric. He said that yes, this skill can be taught, and if we can frame our students, if we can frame curriculum in a very right manner, so we can produce very good orators, those orators who will be guardians of the democracy. In a first, truth and just ideas to prevail. If you are a good orator and you are trained in Aristotle's scheme of things, so definitely you will try everything so that only truth and just ideas must prevail in the society. Second, definitely you will be having that ability so that you can understand the link between your experience to the audience experience. And in any way, if you can connect both the experiences, that means your experiences and audience experiences, then definitely it is going to be very useful for society. Third thing, this is the ends of rhetoric, that rhetoric as a mean must be able to analyze both sides of questions. Not that you are having just one side of questions, you are having experience of just one side of the truth, but you are knowing the questions of both sides, and you are trying to solve those questions, having a comprehensive approach. And last one, again, I'm going to repeat this. This is to defend oneself. If you are knowing how to speak well, so definitely when time comes, when crisis arise, definitely you can defend yourself. So one thing, this is really important, that Aristotle was very much aware that rhetoric can be dangerous also, that you are knowing how to speak, but you are not protecting the first end of rhetoric, that is protecting the truth. But still he offered that this is where persuasion works. So if we are having a strong curriculum for rhetoric, so definitely we can have some restrictions of that particular thing. What is persuasion? Where that danger he highlighted, so he offered a persuasion skill. 3 sources of persuasion that is very famous in the curriculum of linguistics also. That is ethos, logos, and pathos. Ethos means credibility of a speaker. So we can relate this ethos to Mahatma Gandhi. If you have ever heard the voice of Mahatma Gandhi, his speeches, some of his speeches are available on YouTube. Of course, you can hear the voices of Mahatma Gandhi. And if you are not knowing Mahatma Gandhi, definitely you are not going to be impressed by the words, by the way Mahatma Gandhi is speaking. But because Mahatma Gandhi has built up a credibility with his personality, so whatever he is going to speak, whatever he had spoken, definitely it's going to be very, very much impressive for you, and it's going to be very influential. That is called ethos. Now come to the logos. Logos means the logical dimension of the people. It means the content. First is credibility, second is content. If your content is having logic, definitely it's going to be very influential. And the last is pathos, and pathos is emotional dimension of the appeal. So if I'm using that type of words, and in a way I can connect with your hearts, so definitely I'm going to be very influential. So in art of persuasion, which is the integral part of public speaking, three things are very much important: ethos, logos, and pathos. I'm not going to into detail because we are not having that much time. So I'm just leaving this part. If you are interested to have this PPT, so definitely I will be sending that PPT to Satyamji, and you can, after some time, you can follow it. Now come to the Roman tradition. Here you will find great scholar Marcus Tullius Cicero, and he was of the belief that rhetoric can be taught, and we need to establish some school which can teach the art of public speaking to make a public life healthier. He said that there are 5 canons of rhetoric. First one is invention. Identify the best arguments. So you will be having a set of arguments, but you need to identify that which set of arguments are going to do very great benefit while speaking. So invention is the first thing. Second, arrangements. Yes, of course, you are having some set of arguments, but how you are going to portray it, how you are going to arrange those arguments, that matters. And third, of course, your style, how you are giving pause, how you are starting, how you are touching. This is style. Fourth is delivery. Something, and if you are not understanding the same thing, it means there's a problem in my speaking. And of course, the fifth one is memory. So if your memory is strong, so you can relate with different aspects, and the more diversity you can offer in your speaking, you can connect more diverse audience. So Cicero has offered these 5 canons of rhetoric. Now, in Rome, you will find Quintilian school. Like Isocrates there in Greece, you will find here Quintilian school, though time is different. So he was also very much practical, and he wanted to, he believed in that spirit that people must be participating in public affairs. And he said that there's a fundamental 5 duties of a speaker. First one is defend truth. Second is protect the innocent. Third is prevent criminal behavior. Yes, you can influence the people so that they must not do any crime. Third, inspire the military at the time of crisis, at the time of problem. You can inspire your military so that your military must be doing great in the field of war. And last, inspire the public. If you want to use the public asset, so you can inspire through your public speaking. In contemporary time, I'm not focusing now. In contemporary days, we are having very great study especially in the discipline of linguistics. So Shannon-Weaver model, you can find linear model of communication, where you will understand about centered encoding, message, channel, noise, receiving, decoding. A speaker-centric method, you can say like YouTube. SW model of communication, the upgrade version of Shannon-Weaver model. So I'm not focusing here because this is really contemporary. So now come to the important part of our presentation, that is public speaking and democracy. As I have started my lecture in the beginning, and that in the time of especially for the country which is having democracy, if people is not knowing how to speak, and if they're not participating, if they're not raising their voice, so definitely that is very detrimental to democracy. So starting from Isocrates, Cicero, everybody has realized that there's a relationship between speech and civic engagement. So if public is not responding, if public is not is public is silence, so definitely civic engagement is going to be hampered. If you take example of Cicero, he fought against nobility, that existing regime and military dictators, and also paid the price. And you must have heard about Socrates also. He earned the same fate. Um, Cicero also, with the tussle between Octavian and Mark Antony, Cicero paid the price. But Cicero always advocated about the greatest cause of the the more you raise your voice, you make your system more democratic. If you're not raising your voice, definitely you are going to make situation very worse. So democracy is very much dependent on its individuals. So if you're not participating, and when I'm saying participating, I don't mean that you need to just मैं सिर्फ ये नहीं कह रहा कि आपको इलेक्शन में खड़ा हो जाना चाहिए और आपको नेता बनना चाहिए, नेता बनने में भी कोई बुराई नहीं है, but when I'm saying that political public participation is important, it means in any way, in any processes you need to participate. If you are simply asking question, so definitely you are participating, you are casting your vote, you are giving your vote, and your vote is for a conscious candidate, so definitely you are participating in the point. If you are having political literacy, I must point out here, so definitely you know that that in a popular belief, when we talk about public affair nowadays, so in election time people say that oh, my vote is being wasted because the person to whom I have given a vote, that person has lost its election. No, this is a wrong perception actually. Your vote is not vested when your candidate is losing his battle. Your vote is vested when you have chosen a wrong candidate and he has won the thing in the thumping majority. So if you are a conscious person, if you are an individual who knows how to behave in political arena, if you know your political rights, if you know what is political literacy, so definitely you will be voting that person, that honest person, even if he's using his battle, even if he just secured 2 votes, 1 vote for himself and 1 vote, there's 1 more vote. So if you are a conscious person, if you are a citizen, true citizen, so definitely second vote must be of yours, and in that way you are not wasting your vote. And please mark my word, please note it, that if you are expecting any type of real political and social change, so my friend, it will take time. So this is not the science tech, this is not a technology that you are doing something and you will be expecting result at once. This is society. You are dealing with very much alive people. You are not dealing with some objects like physics and other science subjects. So this is a time not to hate politics. Suddenly, especially youth is saying, "Oh, please, I hate politics." But my request, please understand, there's a difference between 2 things. Yes, of course, you need to hate towards the politicization of the issues. If someone is politicizing it, of course, you need to hate. But doing politics is not doing corruption. Doing politics is not doing conspiracy. This is not the time to hate politics. This is a time to love politics. And if you are hating, especially the youth, if youth is hating politics, so definitely the people who are at the top at political spectrum, they will be worry free, because they were very much they are very much confident that youth is actually hating hating politics, and they don't have any restrictions. So with this tradition of public speaking, I must convey this message that you need to ask, always ask to according to Aristotle also, you are not the citizen. If we take the definition of citizenship from Aristotle, so if you are not participating in various political processes, you are not a citizen. So to be citizen, in that ancient sense of the term, you need to participate in various political processes. Now, I want to make one point here, that nowadays some people say that if you are criticizing the government, you need to be very fair. If you're not fair in criticism, you must not do that criticism. And this is very much problematic thing for me, because at the time of asking vote, you have every politician have invited every person if you are having just 18 years of age, and so you can cast your vote, and at the time of voting nobody is saying no no no, you are professor only, you are having right to give vote, no no no, you are the economist, you are the businessman, only you can give vote. No, you are accepting each type of votes, whether that person is just 18 years old, that person is not having enough experience. But at the time of criticism, you are saying please do only fair criticism. What is point about it? And let me tell you one more thing. Criticism is a very comprehensive term. You need not to put any prefix, something like bad or fair criticism, because criticism consists both point of the things. Means you can highlight the negative points as well, and you can highlight some significant points as well. So in democracy, if you are criticizing the government, suppose you are criticizing badly, some so-called unfair criticism. Again, your government will be finding opportunity, and your government can respond to you with the certain appropriate facts. And this unfair criticism will be giving opportunity to your government, so that your government can respond and it can make its face more attractive and more acceptable. And suppose you are doing fair criticism, in that way also your government is finding opportunity to recorrect its course. So in both ways there is no harm if it is a democracy. So criticism, if someone is saying only do fair criticism or only believe in good news, what is good news? No, news is for that you need to have some check on the government. This is the rule of civil society. There is nothing like good news. Okay, there is a one other connotation, but in public life, good news, there is nothing like good news. Whatever happening in the society, whatever the way you are responding to the government, the way your government is doing, this is important. That must be having right source of amount of the news. So in that sense, and the lastly, I want to say good life, which was offered by Aristotle, that is really, really important. And even in this time also, as an individual, what you want good life. The definition of good life must be vary from that time to this time, but there must be politics, there must be political participation and good governance for the sake of good life. And we need to ask that question, whether you are having that good life. If you are not having that good life, so who is responsible, and what is the role of ourselves? First, we must start from ourselves. Whether we are participating the way a civil society member must participate in the era of democracy, we need to ask this question, so that we can continue and we can sustain and we can provide all the opportunities for good life for even the last man of the society. In the last, very briefly, I want to say that if you are, as I have said, that public speaking is very much important for each and every individual. If you are a politician, if you are a public speaker, or even if you are an individual who are willing to participate in various political process, you need to check that while addressing the people, whether you are being able to speak that part which is not simply speakable. So you need to check that. Second, whether you are choosing right issues or not. It's not that any popular issues raised by media you are picking and you are discussing. No, you are very much grounded people and you know what is the real issues of the population. So if you are addressing the population, so definitely choose the right and appropriate issues. Second or third, while communicating with mass, are you being able to peep something which is not visible for each and every person? So you need to go deep. You need to do some study. You need to communicate several other type of people, so that you must go into the deep, and you can unhide those particular unseen things as well. And while next thing, while communicating with the people, you need to be very concerned that at the end of that speaking, whether you are being able to connect the people, or you have spoken something which is going to be offer some divide among the people. So please be careful while communicating publicly, that whatever you are going to write, whatever you are going to speak, that must be connecting the people. Next thing, whatever you are going to communicate, guys, there must be some level of concerns. So you are not only addressing regional level of concerns, but also at the same time you are being able to address national issues. And also, this is a time of globalization, and some would say it's a post-globalization. So interconnectedness. So in your speaking, all three level of concerns must be manifested. And the last thing, whether is with this practice of speaking, whether are you being able to do constructive intervention, something is happening and you are not just criticizing, you are not just highlighting negative point, but also you are being able to give some constructive solutions. So your intervention through the tool of public speaking must be constructive. And this is the last slide of my presentation. If you want to if you want to be a good presentator, if you want to be a good orator, so you need to do some preparedness. Means you need to develop flexibility. You need to be very accommodative and acceptable. You need to be very incorporative. Whatever facts you are having, you need to incorporate you. You need to develop sensitivity towards each and every type of people. Acceptance, already I have highlighted. And then study. If you're not studying, in our country people believe that yes, of course, right now I'm having job, now no need to study. No, whatever profession you have chosen, always try, do not break the tradition of study. The more you will study, you will be knowing more, and you will be having sense of flexibility. And the last thing, dialogue. Whatever you are doing, you are being able to initiate dialogue process. Not that just I am speaking and speaking, and after my speaking, if people are not starting debating on that, or people have not started talking on that, it means I'm not being able to start dialogue. So these things, I'm very thankful again and again with you, to all of you. I'm very thankful to School of Social Sciences, DAVV Indore. Thankful for. I am very sorry. I have taken, I think, 6 minutes more with the speaking time.
Okay, sir. That was extremely insightful, sir. You have extensively spoken on most of the ambits of the topic. We just have some constraints of time, or we would have listened you an hours and hours. And now I would like to request Rekha ma'am to speak a few words.
Okay, thank you, Ayush, once again. And it is indeed really very, very informative talk from Dr. Shirish Pathak sir. It was really, many things were so interesting, like how the entire historical development of communication has taken place. And I really like the most thing where we can communicate. Even in democracy, we can communicate. And as you said, that it is very important, especially in democracy. It's very important to communicate rather than keeping silent. um, and that is the power of, I think, our nation also, because when we say that we have right to speak, Hana, and I think there is no other country in the world where you have right to speak. But at the same time, you should also know what to speak. Okay, everything you cannot speak. So when you are communicating, it is very important that what are you communicating and in what manner are you communicating. That is more important. Although our history taught us the way of communication, including our culture and values, because I remember at the time of Vedic Kal also, whenever people used to speak, they used to speak in a very polite manner, and there the gender equality used to be there. Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
especially which we don't see nowadays. So especially here, to our new entrants and to our old students also, what I want to say that in this era, when the importance of gender is reducing a bit, it is also one of the very important task of social scientists, that to maintain gender respect among the society. And when you communicate to your other partner, may it be male or female, you should remember the way, your language of communication. That is more important. So on once again, on behalf of the School of Social Sciences, I thank you from bottom of my heart to Dr. Shirish Pathak sir for elaborating us about the historical development of communication. At the same time, the way over the histories, the way or the methodology they have adopted while speaking and while communicating their own things. So thank you from on behalf of Social Sciences. Thank you once again, Dr. Shirish Pathak sir. And over to you, Ayush. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
It is
Sir,
my
we are very,
Thank you so much.
sir, this was really a pleasure to have you. We are very glad. Now, I would like to call Sivakshi Agnihotri for a formal Thanksgiving note for you.
Have you taken up the question, Shaison? Ayush?
Ma'am, he have really spoken effectively that there are no such questions which can directly relate to the topic. There are very few questions that personality development
Okay.
and all,
Okay,
they are not related to the
fine.
topic. Yes, Sivakshi Agnihotri.
I, on behalf of entire School of Social Sciences family, thank you all the dignitary present here from the core of my heart. I also show my heartiest gratitude to our chief guest of the program, Dr. Shesh K. Pathak sir. I also thank Dr. Rekha Acharya ma'am. I thank each and every faculty of School of Social Sciences. I show my gratitude to each and everyone present here for Diksharam, the induction program of social sciences. I thank everyone for attending this event with discipline and patience during meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, sir. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, dear. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. धन्यवाद.
Yes, sir. Sure.
Thank you, sir.